right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Wesley Meinecker, and you are listening to BreakFEST, conversation show about film festivals brought to you by a group of UBC students, scholars, critics, and overall cinephiles. Today, I am joined by
Lily Lutz
and
Colin Law.
And we are recording from Espinho, which is the beautiful coastal town just outside of Porto, hosting the 21st annual FEST Film Festival, FEST.
The festival focuses on emerging directors, international films, both features and shorts, networking industry masterclasses brought to the festival by numerous artists, craftsmen, and technicians currently working in the industry, workshops, and of course, awards and competitions.
For the next week, we will be bringing you exclusive content about the festival, providing movie reviews and engagement with the films being shown at the festival, and interviews with the festival's hottest artists, programmers, and filmmakers. Today, to open the show, because our theme is breakfast, what did you guys have for breakfast today?
I started off with a little bit of everything. First morning, wanted to really, dive into everything. Favorite, though, was the kiwis and little brioche buns. Yeah, those are really good. Yeah, with some butter on top. Yeah.
Kind of same as me. We had the hotel buffet breakfast, and I kind of went ham on everything. I ate like 2 bowls of cereal. I had like 6 glasses of juice. I had a bunch of fruit, a bunch of cheese. It was so good.
Also, shout out their coffee. Their coffee was really good.
I was in a rush, so I just mostly had the cheese.
Well, we're about a day and a half into the film festival, give or take, depending on when you arrived. I've watched quite a few films. I think you guys have too. What have your highlights been so far? Film-wise, people-wise, travel-wise, town-wise? What have you guys been liking?
My highlight so far has really been how the film festival community has already just snapped and just everyone's really welcoming and approachable. First day, obviously a bit awkward. We're breaking in our shoes. We're exploring. Everyone's excited. But yeah, the difference was today I got to meet a lot of great people from all over the world.
Yeah, honestly, shout out to the Swedes. I don't know if you're listening, but we should make you listen. There are other Swedish film students who are here presenting their films as well as the UBC film production students. And they've just been so nice and just lovely to meet. And same with this volunteer who I had a really lovely conversation with. And it's just the people is just so interesting, and I love it.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about specifically with the volunteer? Anything exciting to share?
Well, I think that was just really interesting because I had a full conversation with her for 25 minutes in French, which I do speak, but I just think it's really interesting that we find ourselves in Espinho, and I'm a native English speaker, and we're having this conversation in French, and I just think that's so fascinating. And we got into sort of the idea of AI in film and just a bunch of these other hot button issues that are going to get brought up within this film festival that we're about to go into.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what your highlights are.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely the film so far. There's been some good ones. Other than relaxing by the beach. The films I did yesterday, kids animated section. It was the non-competition animated sub-10 section. And there was a lot of cool animated films from there. And then later in the day, we did the Tales of Womanhood. And there was one called Madame Foyja and Dr. Love, which I really, really appreciated. But we'll get deeper into those films in our film digestion segments. So yeah, that's what I would say is the highlight so far.
The last question we want to ask for this quick little introduction segment is, what are we most looking forward to? What have we heard around that everyone's looking forward to for this festival?
There's this speed dating event coming up soon, and that's supposed to be not actual speed dating, for industry people, just meeting all these other people. And like I already mentioned, I'm pretty sure my whole thing now is just meeting people. Because I'm the token extrovert now.
Yeah.
That's such a big part about it, though, is meeting these people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess kind of building on that is the master classes and workshops. I don't know how much one-on-one time that will be with the people running the master classes in terms of meeting them, but in a similar vein, the classes that they're going to teach, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff about some on AI, some on working with actors, and a bunch of topic. So I'm looking forward to that.
And I mean, we are students, so that's sort of our whole thing.
Yeah, that's kind of why we're here.
Yeah.
And to watch movies, of course. How about you? What are you looking forward to?
Same thing, honestly. Like Colin brought up the AI thing. I think that's really something that, like, this festival focuses so much on social awareness issues and things that aren't brought up as much as they probably should be in the world right now. But in this visual sense, just seeing how AI can tie into everything. I don't know how it's gonna be approached, but I'm really looking forward to that because I've been asked how AI interacts with the film industry, and I had no idea how to answer that. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Sweet. Well, stay tuned. Keep listening, guys. We're about to transition into our film digestion segment where a couple of other team members will be talking about the tales of womanhood. So this is just a little intro to get you guys a little sneak peek, a little taste of what's coming for the next week. Stay tuned.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Film Digestion. So today, we went to watch the Tales of Womanhood screening. It was a collection of, it was supposed to be 5 short films, ended up being 4. And let's introduce ourselves. My name's Maya.
I'm Anna.
And I'm Colin.
And we're just going to have a little walk and talk dialogue. All right, so let's start off. What was our favorite film of the day?
I'd say mine was about the Dr. Love one.
Madame Feza
Madame Feza,
and Dr.
yes.
Love. I think that was like everyone in our group's favorite.
That one,
Almost
and then the 4th one, which was
a move.
a move.
A
Yeah.
move.
So that one is also like kind of resonated with me, so I liked it.
You know, actually, we sat in a circle after this screening, and almost everybody's favorite pick was Madame Feza and Dr. Love.
Yes.
Or the last.
I'm wondering why. Why do you think that was our favorite?
I think, first of all, like, I remember someone mentioned it, but, like, it had a obviously bigger budget than every other film, which doesn't mean that it's better, but they obviously had, like, more thought, and also the acting, like, I think the acting was, like, actually, like,
Those
it brought,
performances were lovely.
The
like-
performances really brought something out, and just, like, the topic, the theme is really, I really liked it.
Yeah, I think you could tell, like, that budget didn't go, nowhere.
Yeah.
You could tell they were actors. You could tell there was a real, like, thought put into that screenwriting. I think there's a reason it resonated the most with everybody. I think also its specificity in tying into, like, Muslim French culture and how that played out throughout the score and everything as well, and, like, French Arabic music. I think that they really, like, chose what they wanted to do and stuck with it.
Yeah,
I'll say,
exactly.
at some point, I was worried they were like dealing with too many different topics at once, but they handled all of them really well and they never tried to pretend they were doing so much with every single one that they took on too much. They always handled everything with ease.
No, I totally agree with that. And so this theme, like Tales of Womanhood for this whole screening, like, I guess, how do we think that all these different films tied into this cohesive theme?
Well, yeah, the protagonists were always women. That's definitely the main one. But when we just were talking about the Dr. Love one, like, especially at the end, it was like, dedicated to all the, like, people that, like, kind of tried to reinstall the part of their life that, like, they actually loved. Because, again, like, the theme of the movie was more like, I'm giving up, like, a lot of my life on this.
No, I totally agree. Like, I think that was the common theme throughout all of them, right? It was women reclaiming what makes them women, what makes them happy to be women, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I also sometimes don't know if it's my place to add so much on, because I think that, I mean, as a man, I think absorbing it in is really all I can do to really uplift and really just recommend all those films.
So, I think really the purpose of screenings like this is to show us what we know and don't know and make us sit with it. And I think we're all sitting with it now. All right, well, thank you for listening to the Film Digestion.
All right, so I'm Emma.
And I'm Alma.
And we both just saw Skander Kopti's film Happy Holidays, which was the opening film for the Film Festival, and we're going to be sharing our thoughts on that. So do you want to kick us off with like your general thoughts about this film and like any sort of things that really like stood out to you?
I'd say, okay, maybe let's start by giving like a quick summary. So help me if I'm wrong, but it is kind of like a difficult story to summarize because you have like, 3 stories that are going on at the same time. One about a woman who's pregnant, she's Jewish, the guy is Palestinian. We have to say this director is Palestinian, and the movie pretty much deals with like the situation there right now, then all the complications that come with that. I mean, for the first story. The second story is
this like man, like his girlfriend is pregnant and he wants her to get an abortion. This is the same woman, but it follows like he is like the man who got her pregnant. She wants to keep the child. Then like her sister is very intensely involved with the idea of like she needs to abort this child or it won't have a life that she feels would be like worthy, I guess, which is also kind of interesting just in that idea of like women like and their autonomy and like commenting on like other women's autonomy, making those decisions for them. Like I think there's definitely something to be said about that. But back to the like synopsis, and then I think there's another story following this girl Fifi who's been in a automobile accident and her mother wants to get the insurance money from it, but Fifi doesn't want them to look at her medical file because it says that she's had sex before marriage, so she knows that she's going to be ostracized for that. And I think, is there one final story or is that kind of the...
There's a third story about the sister of the girl who got pregnant. She has a daughter, and the daughter she doesn't want to join the army. And like the story kind of like follows that. The mother, she feels like super kind of like...
She kind of feels like she's failed, I think, like in not instilling these values in her daughter. And that basically comes out that like initially they think her daughter's depressed, but then the psychologist decides like, no, she's doing anything to get out of the draft basically without having to be seen as like a coward. So I think that's also like, the director talked a lot about paradoxes and how they like play into our lives. So I think there is a lot of that at play, especially with the storyline of the mother who's also the sister to the pregnant woman, because like, as we were saying, like she is very against the idea of her daughter, like, or her sister having this child with this Palestinian man and then goes out and gets like Palestinian food afterwards, like after she's so firmly against it. So I think like kind of this like unawareness of like, she's not even aware that like the stuff she consumes is like part of the culture that she is actively like going against. Even with her daughter, like she's so intent on like, she doesn't consider why her daughter might not want to join the military. She just sees it like as a failure of herself instead of like considering that it's kind of like, I don't know, almost like a success that like her daughter is able to think for herself and kind of not like just follow what everyone else is doing, but she doesn't see it that way. She's just like she's very focused on the social implications of everyone's actions, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's interesting that you also mentioned the word like values, because when the director was asked what was this movie about, he kind of like stressed that the whole movie is about kind of like how we create or we add to values that then like create our identities. And sometimes these values, I mean, they could be challenged, they could be a little more thought throughout, and not just like blindly accepted by everyone. And he said like, this is what the whole movie is about, how we kind of like just add to things, create an identity, maybe not being like super ethical on our like decisions.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think like even the idea that like the values that we have like kind of like build off each other and like strengthen, like I think is really kind of like even like formalized even more in the final shot, where during this like siren that goes off to like commemorate all the lives of like the Israeli soldiers that have been lost. The main character, who is the one that got in the car accident, she walks during it, which you're supposed to stay still or whatever. So like even kind of having this like final act of resistance as the final shot of the film, I think really solidifies this idea that like even as we like grow up, like our values are still constantly being challenged. We have to reevaluate them, like even like build on top of them in some cases. Like very much like with this final shot, we see the character really doubling down on like this idea like that she's kind of become like disillusioned and aware of like how much like this society is just fully unaccepting of her and who she is.
You know what? It's very, I think it's very smart and very interesting that he also utilizes women to kind of like voice this, because you can see kind of like the intersectionality of like the different kind of like, the different layers of like oppression that this, women are living in these societies in this particular period. So even, for example, he said that Fifi, the girl whose storyline is about like the sex medical file thing, I mean, you can see how like the values of her family kind of like are putting her in this position where like she isn't able to just like, I don't know, live a normal life, or like she's oppressed, okay, by the government, by the Israeli government there, but also by her family and the values and like everything. So I think that was interesting how he talked about like intersectionality at a certain point in the Q&A.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I feel like he really explored how like we get influenced by all these different forces. Like our identity can't just be chalked up to like one person or one sort of institution. Like it is very much like a patchwork of what we build it to be. I think like even like, like the idea of identity existing like at like the like sort of contact point of all these different intersections, I think is really prevalent in this film, and like kind of exploring like what makes a person, like what builds your identity, like how much of that is like your values and how much of that is just like stuff you can't control, like your race and like where you're born, like that sort of thing, and like how much like that like could change like depending on where you're born or where you grew up or like that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely a very interesting film.
One last thing. I think my favorite thing about like the film was its treatment of time, and how like it kind of like also deals with the whole like main point about like maybe criticizing like these values that we believe in. When he was asked about like his use of time, because the movie really plays a lot with time, he mentioned that he jumps around to kind of like break the illusion of one reality, and also not to make the audience kind of like make it more easy, make it easier for the audience to like empathize with the characters, and not like straight up just like from conclusions about them by like showing first like, I don't know, what they did wrong or like whatever. So I think how he deals with time kind of like is connected to his main point about like not having like one set stone about like values, not one set stone about like a chronological timeline.
Yeah, no, totally. Like I think how he deals with time is very interesting, and how like he preserves these characters as like people. Like we don't immediately get set out as like this is our protagonist, this is our antagonist. Like they kind of change and shift over the course of the film, which I think overall, like very well done film, very interesting film to start off the festival with. So if you have the chance, I'd say I'd recommend going to check out Happy Holidays by Skandar Gupti.
We're here with a segment of Film Digestion, talking about the Festina non-competitive section for kids 9 to 10.
My name is Wesley Meinecker.
And I'm Franca Sparks.
5 movies in total that we watch, animated shorts. In the End, Sun, Yuck, Allegiance, and None or Never.
In the End wasn't my favorite. I thought the animation was really interesting in that one.
Yeah, it was cool. The hand-drawn
one.
Almost stick figure-esque animation.
I was surprised they'd put that into a section for technically children's films, though, because it's not something I would think, if I had a kid to bring them to.
There was nothing content-wise that I would say wasn't appropriate for children in terms of there was no violence or sex or drugs. Just the vibe, it felt very eerie.
I kind of wonder if it was in the children's section just because it was animated, not because it was actually meant for children.
Can happen a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of things where animation just gets treated as children's.
Gets treated as a genre instead of treated as a medium.
Yeah, found the animation quite interesting, but I don't know if this was the section for it to be shown in. And to be fair, it is for older kids, 9 to 10, but still. And then, Son, I think that was probably one of my favorites of the 5.
By Zona Bekmambetova. They're trying to take care of his disabled son, who gets fascinated by the Land Rover on Mars. They seem to run parallel in the film. As the Land Rover in Mars overcomes challenges, the sun also overcomes challenges, just certain daily tasks. And it looked beautiful, and overall it was
really
cute.
sweet. One thing I really liked in it too was this idea of he gets this television set where he learns about the Land Rover, and he's inspired by seeing things on the screen.
Yeah.
And that we're also watching the story unfold on the screen is kind of doing the same thing for us and inspiring us as it is for the son. I also found it interesting that every time in the film that the son kind of was able to overcome some sort of obstacle in his life, the father wasn't present, that the goat or ram, or I don't know what it was always kind of taking the father away. And so he was a caretaker, but he wasn't actually the one pushing the son. It was always when it was just him alone that he was able to eat the food with a spoon or draw or kind of succeed.
Yeah, I guess in every scene he wasn't fully present.
Yeah, he always left whenever.
I didn't even pick up on that.
And so I kind of liked that message of he was independent, even if he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
The father couldn't be the one to spoon feed him.
And the goat was awesome.
The goat was so funny.
Goat.
Yeah.
Literally, if nothing else about this film has appealed to you yet, there's a goat that moves.
He's fantastic. And then Yuck.
French film by Loic Espinho. It's about a boy and a girl with a group of friends. It looks like, and they keep making fun of people kissing, and then you realize that this little boy wants to have his first kiss with this girl, and they go on a little journey. It's basically a first kiss movie.
And they have this thing where when they're about to kiss, their lights light up and become shiny.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how they show their emotions, is all through lips. And then they have a part where the boy gets really upset and his lips turn dark.
And same as all the other characters that they see kissing, as they're about to kiss, their lips light up pink. And there's one scene we see two guys sitting there. I don't know. Well, I don't know if they're soccer players or just soccer. Do you know who Messi is?
Yes.
Do you know who Ronaldo is?
Yeah.
Two of them were wearing the Messi and Ronaldo.
Kind of a Romeo and Juliet situation here.
This is so unrealistic. That would never happen. I love the queer representation, but a Messi
not.
fan and a Ronaldo fan, no, that's
never the two shall meet.
This movie's trying to bridge that gap.
Maybe this is how those two worlds meet.
So. But,
that's funny. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, I know. I thought that was...
And then Allegiance was a little tricky for us because it was a French film, but subtitles were only in Portuguese.
Yeah.
So message was lost a little bit. I have done some French in high school, did French immersion and university classes, so I picked up on some.
That's good.
So my understanding of the film was essentially there was this kind of magical queen figure who every time it was a new moon would grant a wish to one of her subjects. And so they'd come forward each new moon and ask for something. And so there's also the court jester who's telling the story to the audience. And at the beginning, we have this kind of peasant man show up, and he's like, I can't make any food. I need to get some, I just, my farm crop is not yielding anything. And so the queen snaps her fingers and makes, a thing of food. And then he comes back the next new moon and is like, my tools aren't working anymore. My hands are all bare. And so she snaps her fingers and gets him, a kind of mechanical horse. Yeah. And then the third time he comes back, he asks for, I think it's for the queen to be happy. But that doesn't like. Part is where I get confused because that's when the court gesture takes over. And it's like, why would you
Right.
ever ask that? Like, I can't believe, don't you want something else? And he's like, don't you want freedom? You should ask for freedom instead. And then somehow the court gesture is able to take control, and the queen disappears.
Like Queen. it seems
Essentially,
like, and
he
ascends the
gains
throne.
her power and ascends the throne. But I didn't fully understand what was happening at the end, because then he goes through and he's like asking people like, oh, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And then he looks right at the audience and kind of zooms in and is like, what do you want? Like, I choose you. But how he got those powers is very vague.
But it was cool animation.
It was very nice animation,
and,
and I think
if we could watch it with English subtitles, it might be a bit more enjoyable.
yeah, I think it would be fun to rewatch that. And then last but not least was None or Never.
This was by Finnish directors.
I believe.
Very similar sort of animation style to the first one in the end. It was maybe a bit more
color
than
in
the
this
end.
one.
Yeah, there was color in this one, but it was still hand drawn, and also shared some Catholic imagery.
Yeah, a lot of
with-
stuff with nuns
Yeah.
in the Children's
But
Festival.
but specifically the first one and the last one,
Yeah.
which they're both the hand-drawn ones and both about similar content.
Yeah.
But this one was cool. This one I liked a lot because it seems to be about the story about a nun who is part of the sisterhood and then undergoes some sort of affair, it almost seemed like. It's not...
She kind of met this magical man.
Yeah.
And he changes sizes all the time.
Yeah. And they like sit on a tree together and spend the day together. And it seems like she's engaging in what would be considered some sort of sin.
Yeah.
Right? And she feels guilty about it. And then by the time she gets back, she shows up late for the choir session. And this was the scene I really liked. I fully sold on what the movie was doing until this scene where you see the nun crawling underneath the rest of the nuns, and underneath their dresses, it's like one is wearing red boots, one there's like a rainstorm, one a bunch of like swimmers, I think. There was like just a bunch of different imagery,
all different.
which I think was like conveying their different lifestyles and saying that they all have things going on.
They're
under
kind of
the
inner
surface.
worlds,
They're inner worlds that they're not able to present to the church without, and they probably are carrying this massive amount of guilt with them. And I feel like that's what that scene was kind of.
That was definitely a really strong scene.
The story is about this specific nun who meets this guy and is engaging with this sin and probably feels super guilty, but then realizes in that moment that she's not alone and that they're all going through
one
that.
thing they did really strong is all the nuns look the exact same, like they're drawn the exact same, except for her, who has these really red cheeks.
Yeah.
But at the end, her red cheeks go away, and kind of the only way you can tell which nun is kind of the nun we've been following is her the rumpled. You can tell it's her through that, but otherwise, she kind of feels less separate from the sisterhood. And they also are this kind of amorphous blob when they're traveling everywhere. Like they'll all go like glide down the staircase railings together, and when they're singing, they're shown as one being rather than individual. But then when we look under, you can see that they actually are.
The story's essentially about bringing individuality to people that get grouped in.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah,
I
it
did
was really
like that
sweet.
one quite a bit.
I'm really excited to see what else the Festina section has in store.
We will catch you in the next segment of Film Digestion.
Awesome. Till next time.
Hello, my name is Marcia, and thank you for listening to BreakFEST. Fernando Vasquez and Ana Ferreira are the two co-directors of the festival. I interviewed Fernando today.
I am the co-director and artistic director of Fests, basically. That's about it. I'm responsible for most of the programming, both film-wise and a big chunk of the industry program, and also for managing a lot of the administrative side of the festival.
Thank you so much for making the time for this interview, Fernando. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of Fest?
Okay, so the festival started in 2004. It started as a result of one of our colleagues who was the founder, Felipe Pereira, who was a film student like myself at the time. And we finished our degrees and we felt like we knew a lot about lighting a scene and writing a script and like the basics of making a film. But we didn't really know anything about the industry. We had no idea where to get money to make films, where to show our films. We knew nothing of the industry, and we felt at the time there wasn't a huge amount of film festivals focused on new filmmakers. So that's how Fest was born. It started off as a showcase of young talent, and then progressively it started to empty the holes in our knowledge that we recognize in other people's knowledge. So yeah, basically that's how it started. I only really got involved. I got involved at the very beginning conceptually, but I only really got involved in it in 2010, if I or 9 maybe, and. Basically, I came here first as a press officer because I used to be a journalist, film critic, and very quickly I became an executive producer, and then eventually I took over the programming.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was actually going to ask you, for people who want to be involved with festivals, what would you recommend they do?
Well, a little bit of everything. Obviously, it depends on each person. Everyone's personal interests. But if you want to have the full experience, you should obviously check out the films, starting by the feature films, but also the short film competition. If you are a little bit more daring, try also our side sections. This year, obviously, try our Be Kind Rewind section that is focused on Georgian cinema, which we feel is one of the key filmographies of the moment. Obviously, check out some of the masterclasses. There's plenty of them, masterclasses and workshops, covering all sorts of subjects from directing to editing. We have a very special one this year for the first time ever, an editing workshop focused on documentary filmmaking with Chris King, who is he's done a lot of the big biopics, the Amy Winehouse film, Amy and Senna and Maradona and the Banksy, what's it called? Exit Through the Gift Shop documentary. And he's going to be talking a lot about how to make selections out of gigantic archive footage, which is a big problem usually for people that work on those sorts of films. So yeah, that's just an example in many, but also obviously use the experience here for the more social or network side of the event. That is quite strong. One of our big bets is always that, try to create an environment where everything is very open, very informal. There's no VIP areas, nothing that usually stops people from communicating. And most important, the guests that we have here, they already come knowing that what we ultimately want from them is to be open-minded, to be ready to share, even potentially grab some people to work with them, or even end up working with them. We're very proud of several circumstances of people that met here and they started collaborating. So yes, basically, I guess that's, and go to parties, obviously.
You were telling us a little bit about the, special things that Fest has to offer. And you did mention that this festival has a focus on new directors. And I was wondering if you could tell us maybe a little bit more about what you think makes Fest so unique.
It stands out from the crowd. I wouldn't say that we're that unique. I think what we do is that we sort of reproduce what happens at a giant film festival like Cannes or Berlin or something like that, but at a much more intimate scale. So that does make things very easy for someone, especially someone that is starting off in the industry. It's very daunting to go to a big film festival, arrive in a cocktail party and everybody's already talking to each other, and it's difficult to introduce yourself into that world. Here, I think it's quite easy to do that. That has been one of the big objectives, and I do think that makes it unique. Obviously, as the festival grows, there's years with more people than others, obviously, but as the festival grows, that has been hard to do. Before, when this was much smaller and we had 100 and 150 people, everybody knew each other. By the end of the second day, that work was easier. But I think now also we have some structures that allow the participants to take over very quickly. So for instance, today we're going to have the speed meeting, which is certainly one of those structures that everybody has a chance to, everybody that is interested in participating has a chance to know each other and spend some time with each other and leave the room already knowing a wide range of people. They're not going to remember everyone, obviously, but they'll for sure leave there knowing 10, 20 people, probably already chatting on the corridor. So that, I guess, makes it unique. This particular edition was the programming. As I mentioned, this is not necessarily unique, but for us it is rare. This particular focus on documentary this year, this focus on Georgia. I would say our short film, especially the international competition, our short film competition, the Silver Links, it's quite unique because normally film festivals follow very strict editorial lines or programming lines. We try and open a window to what we believe is the future of cinema. In order to do that, you need to show a little bit of everything.
You mentioned yesterday on your speech that the focus is on bright futures, particularly. And I can also see that you have a whole section about AI in film. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about this, a little bit about this choice of like a positive view of the future, and why do you think it's important, and also how does it relate to AI?
Sure. Well, AI is certainly one of the points that we were thinking of. Well, basically, we watch a lot of films, and we watch a lot of films by new generations of filmmakers, and we have noticed that the perspectives have been becoming darker and darker and darker every year. Not just darker, depressed, really, understandably. I think there's more than enough reasons to be depressed these days. Which only really reflects the general mood, at least in Western society, but I would say that it goes beyond that part of the world. And we felt like, okay, it's enough of all of this nihilism, this sense that everything is screwed, or worse, or a worse word. There's nothing we can do. I feel like there's a general sense of anger, understandable anger, but anger is totally pointless if it's not used as an energy to change things. So what I meant in the speech and what we meant in the or tried to do in the programming was to find films that would encapsulate all of this, but do it in a constructive way. By that I mean not just necessarily saying that, oh, the world's gonna end very soon, there's gonna be a massive war or global warming is gonna happen just like that, and there's nothing we can do about it. That's a very conformist way of seeing the future. And as we said, the future isn't written. That's the motto of this year's festival, because it is. The truth is, this is not the first time the world is in a difficult circumstance. There's always a way out. We just need to think about it, or we need to at least put ourselves in a place where we can think about it. And that's what I think a lot of the films here do. That they highlight many of the problems that are going on, but they try and not necessarily show a way, but set the stage for something better. AI enters here in the sense that certainly one of the biggest menaces in general is the way AI is developing. Not necessarily the existence of AI or the development of AI, but the way where it's going, which is very focused on and centered on many dubious perceptions of what humanity is and what we want. For instance, the way algorithms try and force us to watch the same stuff all the time. We like familiar stuff that makes us feel comfortable, but that's not necessarily what we want, and that's not necessarily what we need. So, and when we feel that AI is already having a huge impact in cinema, it can have a positive effect. We're not yet sure how, but we do feel like we have about 3 to 5 years to make sure that this debate is full on, and It's in time to make sure that whatever happens and whatever the influence is going to be positive, or mostly positive. There's going to be negatives. There's always negatives with any development. We are very worried about what may happen in the film labor market. A lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of the guests that we have here are running the risk of not having a job in 5 years, even though they're absolutely amazing artists. So that's something that we certainly need to talk. We also do this screening of AI films. We have already done it in the past. We decided to do it again because the development is gigantic. And we had a group of films that we thought, okay, we really want to show this. This needs to be seen, but we don't want to put them in competition because they're not fully made by humans. So we had to find a place for that, and that's something that we definitely want to develop in the future. Maybe even have a competition just for that.
Oh, thank you so much. And the last question would be, could you tell us a little bit about the focus on Georgia?
Sure. Well, that was something that we were already planning to do for quite a while. Georgian cinema has been the fashionable cinema in Europe for a while, for very good reasons, because they're very good. There's a new generation of extremely talented filmmakers. The moment this became the right moment because of what is happening in Georgia. Basically, part of the country, close to 20% of the country, was invaded a few years back by Russia. It's a very similar situation to what's happening in Ukraine, for very similar reasons. So there's this confrontation between those who have a more European perspective and those who have a more pro-Russian perspective. And ultimately, in this logic of being positive and looking for positive visions of the future, the truth is that a big chunk of the population in Georgia, and pretty much almost all the filmmakers in Georgia, they have a very positive vision of the future. They want to be part of a more globalized, interconnected world. At a time where people who are living in a globalized, interconnected world don't really care about it anymore. So if we want to look at a positive way of looking into the future, Georgia is a great example, even if the circumstances are terrible. Because there's fighting in the streets, lots of people getting arrested, anyway, all the problems. So we thought this was the moment. There was another point that made us think of this with some urgency. Last year, a series, or most, big filmmakers from Georgia decided to stop cooperating with the Georgian Film Institute and create an alternative Georgian Film Institute, because the institute is connected to the government, who is pro-Russian. So we felt that this is a way of supporting them. Let's show their films. Let's give them some money. Let's give them some promotion and some highlighting. So yeah, ultimately that's the reason, and this was also the right time because this last 12 months have been amazing. They won Holy Electricity, which is one of the films that we're screening, won the Golden Leopard, which is the biggest award in Locarno Film Festival. The Antique, which is another film that we're screening, was one of the most talked about films in Venice. So this is actually the best moment to do this for all of these different reasons.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you also for the focus on the political aspect of film and telling us a little bit about like the decisions. I think this is very interesting and very urgent right now. Our podcast, it's called BreakFEST, kind of like BreakFast. So we have like a funny question by the end, which is going to be, and we were wondering, how does breakfast look on the festival days for you, that you're running around so much?
At best, a couple of slices of bread with some cheese and ham. We don't really have that much time in the morning. So yes, only later in the day we actually get a chance to sit down and eat something properly. Breakfast is not very good for us. This is not the most healthiest period of the year.
Okay.